For those of you that remember David Letterman's stupid human tricks, we're going to do a stupid podcast trick. It's very simple. We're going to use dramatic pauses. You might start off talking slow, and then you're going to have the music start to build, and you're going to have it stop right before a key phrase. All right, you ready? Here we go. Last month, I asked you to look inside yourself and look for the answer for this month's question. What is that question? What are we answering today? The question is, what if for whatever reason you had to stop podcasting? Hit it, ladies.
The School of Podcasting with Dave Jackson.
Podcasting since 2005. I am your award-winning Hall of Fame podcast coach, Dave Jackson, thanking you so much for tuning in. If you are new to the show, this is where I help you plan, launch, grow, and monetize your podcast. My website is schoolofpodcasting.com. You can use the coupon code LISTENER, that's LISTENER, when you sign up for either a monthly or yearly subscription. And if you're new to the show, I do this on occasion where I will reserve the last episode of the month to hear from you. And I ask you a question. In this case, this month's question is, what would you miss the most if you had to stop podcasting? And a bunch of you sent in your answers. We're going to hear about that in just a second. But what I want to do right now is talk about something I would miss if it went away, and that is podpage.com. If you are trying to build a website for your podcast, quit messing with WordPress and Squarespace and Wix and Weebly. Look, this was designed for podcasters, and there are 1,000 people in a Facebook group saying, hey, can we get it to do that? And then Brendan Mulligan, the mastermind behind Podpage, says, I think we can do that. It's amazing. And you don't have to be a nerd to create a great looking website in about 5 minutes. It's insane. So you say, well, what if I want to have it, I don't know, connect to my Patreon or a donation page? Done. What if I want to sell merch? Done. Can I have people that I interview put in their own bio and then go right to my scheduling link? Yeah, we can do that. What about sponsors? Done. It's all built in. Collecting email addresses? Done. And the latest one is somebody said, hey, let's say I'm James Cridlin over at podnews.net, and he wants to announce to the world that, hey, you should vote for him at the podcast awards. There's now a banner that you can put at the top of your page for like big announcements and things like that, which is a little bit like the episode signature. If I told you about that, the episode signature is something you put in one place and it's automatically inserted at the end of every episode. Like, hey, I'm going to Podcast Movement. Meet me at the Libsyn booth. And then when I come back, I can change that to, hey, I don't know, you should sign up at the School of Podcasting. It's fun. It's awesome. You can try Podpage without being a giant nerd and end up with a great looking website. All you got to do is go to schoolofpodcasting.com/try Podpage. That's schoolofpodcasting.com/try Podpage. Everyone jazz hands. Exactly. Back in the 80s. All right. Back in the 80s, there was a band called Cinderella. And there was this guy who I'm pretty sure just gargled rocks, but they had a song and he'd go, you don't know what you got until it's gone. And that's kind of the idea of this month's question of the month, because this is really for the people that don't have a podcast yet. Oh, that's right. It's the old switcheroo, because one way is to say, this is why I podcast, or let's flip that around on its head and go, what would you miss the most if you couldn't podcast? And here is what you had to say.
Hey, Dave Jackson and the fellow listeners of the School of Podcasting. I am Kris of the Kris and Kristine Show and also of Podtastic Audio. You can find me on the interweb at www.krisandkristineshow.com, and then it's both spelled with the letter K for the name. Now, to answer your question about what would I physically miss about podcasting if I could not do it anymore, although I have not been doing it that long, long, only about 2 years total. But what I really would miss would be all the community and all the friends that I've made over the last 2 years across the world. I know people in all parts of the world that have either been on our show, have loved our show, commented about our show, meeting new people. It's been fantastic. The podcasting community has been very, very supportive of new podcasts like mine, and it's been great. But more than just meeting new people, I love creating content. I'm a very creative person by nature, and I don't do this for the money. I do it because I love doing it. When you listen to our shows, you will hear that energy come across the microphones. That's because we love actually doing this. It brings us joy. So speaking of podcasting, here's a really quick because of my podcast story. I started doing this 2 years ago, had no idea how to even make a podcast. And just recently, I had a chance to talk to the co-founders of CleanFeed, cleanfeed.net, and they were fantastic. So much, we had a great time that they actually published an article about me on their website. So those are the things that I would miss if I did not podcast anymore. So thank you so much for letting me share my story.
Hey, Dave. This is Eric Alton Glenn Hilliard from the White Collared podcast, a retrospective commentary on the USA TV series White Collar. The website is at www.whitecollarledpc.com. The thing I would miss the most if I could not podcast any longer would be having a ready-made excuse to buy equipment. As it is right now, if I want to buy something, I just say, hey, it's for my podcast. If I didn't have my podcast, I'd have to think of something, and that might be tough. Thanks, Dave. Take care.
Thank you, Eric. Just remember, her podcast is called Shoes.
If I couldn't podcast anymore, I think the thing that I would miss the most is the opportunity to connect with people and hear their stories and give them that platform to share it, because we share a lot of very sensitive stories of people with the world. Our podcast is Foster Care, an Unparalleled Journey. Everything is at fostercarenation.com. And we tell stories. No, we hold space for people to tell their stories all about their journey through foster care, whether they were involved in foster care as a kid or as one of the adults, as a foster parent or a caseworker or anybody along the line.
Thank you so much. That's one of those podcasts where did you just hear a bunch of people go, hey, he's talking about me.
Hi, everyone. This is Kim Newlove from the Pharmacists Voice podcast. I have a journey-style podcast mixed with an interview show. I alternate solo shows and interview shows. The solo shows are about my career change from pharmacist to voice actor, and the interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate for something, educate in some way, or entertain. My website is thepharmacistvoice.com. The thing I would miss most is connection. I have a connection to my audience. When I do a solo show, they get to know me, and they reach out to me, and they like, comment on, and share my podcast because I believe they enjoy the connection with me. Now, when it comes to my interview shows, I really like connecting with other people. I enjoy the connection. I enjoy that they share my show with their network, and by extension, I get connected with their network. For me, it's all about connection. I have a business with a podcast. It's good for business to have connections. To answer your question, Dave, the thing I would miss most is connection.
I'm noticing a pattern here, but they're not all about connection. Although, in reality, this one is about connection as well. But check this out.
Hi, Dave. Scott Johnson here. Might sound a little odd, but the thing that I would miss the most is making people cry. A lot of times people message me on Instagram or from my podcast listener Facebook group, and they say, I just listened to this episode, and I cried through most of it. And I love that, because that means the story touched a nerve. There's nothing wrong with shows that talk about sports or business or whatever, but one of my goals for my show is to go really deep and for my guest to be really vulnerable and get into what happened to them. And on some episodes, the guest might break down when they're telling their story. So that's what I would miss the most, just getting to that raw human emotion. My podcast is called What Was That Like? where I talk to regular people who have been through some type of extremely unusual situation. It's available on every app or at whatwasthatlike.com.
Thank you so much, Scott. And boy, if you ever wonder, is my content engaging people? If they're crying, yeah, your content's engaging people.
Hi, this is Mark Vinette from the History of North America podcast, where I explore the wonderful and tragic stories of North America's inhabitants, heroes, villains, leaders, environment, and geography at markvinette.com. The thing I would miss most is sharing quality time with my teenage son, Sean, who is my partner, audio technician, and sound editor.
Well, he's doing a great job. You sound amazing. And that leads to me. And silly me, I didn't write this down. So I'm going to riff this off the top of my head. And I can't really, I would miss having the opportunity to impact people in a positive way. I guess that's one way of putting it. I don't have kids. I tried to have kids, wasn't in the cards. And so if you're a parent, you kind of have a legacy. Like when you're gone, your name carries on. And I don't have that. I have nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews, but nonetheless, that's kind of a weird thing. And I would miss, this sounds, I think, I keep saying weird, not if that's the right phrase. I think because it makes me sound like a weird egomaniac in a way. But there's definitely a dopamine kick when I look at my stats, and I look at my stats once a week. When I upload this episode, I will look at the stats for the last episode. That's it. But when I see that thousands of people have heard what I had to say, and I realize there's going to be somebody out there who goes, hey, just because it was downloaded doesn't mean they heard it. Okay, got it. Easy. But as a teacher, you want to impact people and help them do whatever it is they want to do. And so when I see that, I'm like, okay, if the math is correct, somewhere in there, I'm helping somebody. So I think I would miss that. And I would probably turn to writing, I guess. But I don't know. We didn't really specify that. Like, why am I not podcasting? I know I did an episode of a podcast that's really horrible called Building a Better Dave. It's just me spewing stuff. And I did an episode called Marriage Advice from the Divorce Guy, because I've been divorced twice. And I thought, hey, if Catholic priests can give advice on marriage, why not a twice divorced guy? And I thought one day, I'm like, that would be a book. And I think that's part of the other thing I really love about podcasting is it allows me to be as creative as I want to be. So if you haven't figured it out, a lot of people here said community. And it might be you that's like, oh, I don't do good in groups. The beautiful thing about podcasting, it really is so cool. I started in my brother's basement next to the water heater, waiting for the furnace to shut off and praying that the dryer wouldn't start and that no one would flush the toilet. And it's a great way to meet thousands of people without meeting thousands of people. And you will attract like-minded people. When I heard about that Foster podcast, I was like, oh, that's going to be amazing. I can just smell it. That people are going to go, he's talking to me. And what's great about it is you then attract people like you. And you then feel comfortable in that small group of people who are kind of like you. And that gets you used to being in a group to where you might actually end up in a group of people that are strangers, and you just start to transition into this whole other person that is still yet you. And I know I've known a few people that have said, hey, I'm an accountant. That's what I do, but it's not who I am. And podcasting lets me be more of who I am and do something that I want to do in this area of living. And so it is kind of a way to, in some cases, restart yourself or just start a new portion of your life. So there is a community that's waiting to embrace you. And I know for you, that might be a little intimidating, but I'm here to tell you, I'm going to Podcast Movement next week in Nashville. I'll be at the Libsyn booth. So if you want to come see me, I am there. I'm going to be there pretty much nonstop. I would love to say hi. If you're into fist bumps or elbow touches or hugs, I'm open to all that. I'm fully vaccinated. And I'm really looking forward to hanging out with my community. I've missed these people very, very, very much. And if you are feeling alone, to me, that is one of the greatest things. I live by myself, and yet I have friends all over the world. And that is priceless in my book. I wanted to talk about starting where you are and talk about some gear that I bought. Now, this is all video stuff. And so if you're like, I don't need video stuff, I'm going to skip this. Well, hang on tight. Let's get to why did I buy this? There are a couple reasons. Number one, I did not. Now, there's definitely a joke here. I didn't like the way I looked on video. I will never like the way I look on video. That's not what I'm talking about. I have shark teeth. I could go on, but I just couldn't quite get. I just couldn't get it to where I was comfortable. Let's go that route. And I have a lot of YouTube videos. I've done a lot of video, but I was kind of like, it doesn't. And I have a Logitech C920. That is a great webcam, but I was not comfortable with it. I bought a Sone VZ-1, which I'm very comfortable with. It's a camera, but it's also something you can use to do live streaming. And it does the cool thing where it turns the background blurry and that whole 9 yards. And then Elgato. Now, Elgato is kind of the Apple of gaming and live streaming, from what I understand. And it's true. Their stuff is not cheap. It's not insanely expensive, but it's definitely not cheap. And so they came out with a new camera called the Elgato Facecam. It is $200 compared to the $70 for the Logitech C920. And I believe the Sone VZ-1 now is going for about $700. I think I paid $900 for that. And do I not like the Sone ZV-1? No, but I was like, you know what? This Facecam thing, I could see my audience going, hey, I might get that, because it is a nice step up from the C920. And that's my whole point. As I play with this more, does it look nicer than the Logitech C920? Absolutely. Does it look a ton better? Maybe. I like the fact that it doesn't have a microphone, so I will never have to go, oh crap, what? It switched microphones. It picked me, because that's always horrible. And I love the fact that I can make my settings and get it to where I have some sort of pigmentation, because Casper the Ghost looks at me and goes, man, you are white. So I can kind of make it look like I have some sort of flesh tone, and then save it. And if I reboot my computer, it won't lose my settings, which the C920 did constantly, which drove me nuts. And so I am going to be doing more on my YouTube channel. And I was just like, it's $200. I recently got a raise on some of the things I do. So I had a little money in the bank, and I was like, yeah, let's give this a shot. And so I say that because there are still people, if I look at their YouTube channels, that have so much more equipment than I have. And they've got green screens, and they've got this, and they've got that. And I'm just here to tell you, you kind of work your way into this stuff. Like Eric was talking about, your podcast is a reason to go buy stuff. Well, I don't golf. I don't drink. I don't, this is my hobby. Yeah, it's my job too, but it's also my hobby, and you spend money on hobbies. And so I was like, okay, now I also bought some lights, some Elgato lights. And again, I had lights before, but I always seemed a little, cause again, I'm white, like people like have me come over so they can white balance their cameras. That's a total video nerd joke. But anyway, and I just couldn't get that with the current light. And I had Dasney lighting. It wasn't bad. It was cool. It had a remote control also. And I just was like, And I got this new light new pair of lights. I like those better. They're taller. They're much taller than my other ones. They don't have stands. They just bolt to my desk. And that makes me a little more comfortable. And then in the total world of, boy, I don't need this at all. But everybody said, oh, if you're getting into Elgato, you have to get a Stream Deck. And it's this little box with buttons that I can now push here and turn my lights on. I can press another button, have them dim. I can press one button and it will tweet out that, hey, I'm live, and put a website there. It's all sorts of cool little buttons. And it would be hard to say this is a need ever. It's cool. It's fun, and it speeds things up. And as I'm redoing a lot of the videos for the schoolofpodcasting.com, I like to keep them up to date. And there are a number that are a little outdated, and I'm updating those now on a daily basis, trying to do at least one video a day. And this is going to make things easier. And so I say that to say that, number one, you don't have to buy the top stuff out there. When I started playing the guitar when I was, in whatever, the 5th, 6th grade, something like that, I had a really crappy guitar. And when I finally had pushed through the learning curve, then I had a paper route, and I saved up $300 and bought a really nice guitar that was used. And over the years, I've bought more guitars. You kind of work it up. You don't have to, I guess that's my point. If you're thinking of starting a podcast and you're like, well, I can't afford the Joe Rogan mic that's $500 and the boom arm that's another $400, and I need this and I need that. Oh, you can start you can start a solo podcast for $70. Yeah. Okay. $75 if you buy a pop filter. And then, media hosts and things like that are going to add up. But I'm just here to say you kind of can grow into it. In fact, I want to play a clip from the Podcasting 2.0 show. This is Adam Curry talking about the No Agenda show, which is a show now that has people donating thousands of dollars every episode. And you can hear how he grew into it. And it's also going to tie in nicely with the question of the month, which is coming up right after this.
I do want to dispel one rumor. No Agenda is used as a value for value example, and we pioneered it, I think. When someone says, yeah, but Adam Curry's a cult of personality, somehow meaning that, oh, of course, I'm famous. No. What started as a 20-minute Skype call has now lasted 14 years. We grew very slowly, maybe 15% year over year. I had to sell possessions to feed myself during it. Cult of personality, no. It started off as washed up VJ and some old tech dude. This was not the kind of marketing you're looking for. So it's just
and
what
those
it
early
takes.
shows from when y'all first started, the sound quality was poor. I mean, they were not anything like what people understand the No Agenda show to be like today.
No, but that grew, and that's exactly my point. Is it grew? We started to understand, and that may be for just a few people. It's very possible that not everybody can do that. Well, you may be able to sing, but it doesn't mean you belong on Spotify with getting money.
So again, you grow into where you are, and then it's like climbing a ladder. Then from there you go, oh, do I want to go up there? I guess I might need this or that. The question of the month for August, and that's why I wanted to play that clip. You heard Adam saying people are like, oh, he's famous. And he's like, yeah, washed up DJ and some old tech dude, I think is what he said. I need these by August 27th. And that is the question of the month. Can you achieve podcasting success without being a celebrity? And of course, the fun part of that is the phrase podcasting success. So I expect these to be, in some cases, maybe a bunch of because of my podcast stories. But if you think that's the case, if you're like, hey, no, I've achieved podcast success and I'm not a celebrity, I want to hear about it. But I also want to hear the opposite. If you go, nope, absolutely not. And I've already said, I feel that you can have podcasting success without being a celebrity, but I am open to hearing the other side. Feel free to try to convince me the other way. It's called a dialogue. I like to have those. You share differences of opinions and maybe you both learn something. But I need that by August 27th, 2021. Go to schoolofpodcasting.com/question. Ever do this? It's 9:12. I realize I haven't even started my show notes yet. And it dawned on me that I put laundry in about 11:30. So I think it's probably ready to go into the dryer. Thanks so much for listening to the website again, schoolofpodcasting.com. Everything we talked about today, you can find at schoolofpodcasting.com/785. I'll be in Nashville at Podcast Movement. If you will be there and want to meet me, I will be at the Libsyn booth. So put that on your calendar. Stop by Libsyn booth and see Dave. If you're ready to start your podcast, schoolofpodcasting.com/start. Use the coupon code LISTENER. And thanks to Podpage for sponsoring this episode. See schoolofpodcasting.com/try Podpage. Until next week, in the future, I'm going to do an episode on how to choose a media host. And I know the trolls are like, you can't do that. You work for Libsyn and they're a media host. It's going to be factual based, not opinion. And if it is opinion, I will say this is my opinion and here's why. And then you can tell me I'm full of crap. Thanks for joining me on my mission to rid the world of boring podcasts. Until next week, take care. God bless. Class is dismissed.
If you like what you hear, then go tell somebody. If you like what you hear, then go tell somebody.
Don't know what you got till it's gone now. Don't know what it is I did so wrong.
Can I have my customers create my customers? Can I have my clients? Can I have, say it, Dave, you can say it. They're called, interviews. What would it be? Interviewees? Those people. This is how I'm going to live forever. No. Oh, crap. Take care. God bless. Class is dismissed. Thanks for joining me on my mission to rid the world of podcasting mistakes and stuff that I can't really, wow.
Hey, Dave Jackson, Rich Palmer here from richpalmer.com. Of course, my voiceover site, as well as my podcasts, Access Indie, the independent music podcast at accessindie.com, and a brand new one I'm doing called richperspective.com, which is, my perspective on things, all things Rich Palmer. And that includes not only my voiceover work, but also talking about my music endeavors and my brand new venture into mental health, talking about mental health and how I've been teaching in that realm. So anyway, the reason I'm sending you a message today is to give you a little feedback about several episodes that I've heard recently from School of Podcasting. I know it's been a long time since I've reached out to you and life is busy, but I just think that it's time to give you some kudos. Not that you haven't received those already and not that you don't deserve them, because you certainly do. Back in episode 777, you talked to us about editing our podcast interview for content. And you gave us some great tips in that episode. Well, I want to share with your listeners that not only did you share that information, those tips, those skills that people can acquire, but you demonstrate those in the next several episodes. Of course, your interview with Adam was top notch, and you did your homework and it paid off. And you demonstrated some of those things you talked about in that earlier episode. You did it again with Joe Salcehi's secret weapon. And then, of course, in 782, you broke it all down and said, here's how it works. Here's what it takes. And it's not as simple as turning the mic on. My friend, I appreciate your insights and I appreciate the time that you took to share that kind of skill set, because it does take some time and it is certainly a learned process. You have been doing this so long, and School of Podcasting, I don't know if people really appreciate if they are taking for granted the School of Podcasting as a podcast show, because you give all of this stuff to your listeners for free, right? You do it for free, and you've been doing it for years. I mean, episode 782, come on. We've been around a long time, my friend. You and I started out real early in this process, and we've shared a lot of insight through the years. And I'm so glad to be back giving you some more feedback. Thank you for what you're doing. You are appreciated. I appreciate you, as I know so many other people do. Okay, enough patting you on the back. Thank you for School of Podcasting, free. And if anybody has any interest in getting voiceovers for your podcast, I really would appreciate you giving me a shout at richpalmer.com. It's that easy. Thanks, Dave.